Growing up, I was poor and homeless. I didn't come from any background that would ever have me envision that eventually, at some point in my life, I would have a business that was doing over $2 million a year as a creator. And there's a few things that I wish I had known before I kind of jumped in head first, or really wish I would have found out early on that would have saved me years of grief and heartache and headache and frustration, not just for myself, but for my friends, my family, the team that I was working with. And so in this video, I want to walk you through 7 really harsh truths that I wish I had known before I started my full journey being a creator that would have really sped up the process and helped me achieve the goals a lot faster. So number 1 is asking yourself this question. Do you want to be popular or do you want to be profitable? And I know it sounds like a really weird question to ask because I think for most people watching this, me included, I would say, well, I want to be both. I want to be popular and I want to be profitable. But the problem is, a lot of creators, when they first get into the game, they are really chasing popularity and thinking that it's this one or the other approach. I'm going to be popular first. And then when I hit a certain level of popularity, then I will roll that into profitability. And so I'm going to build my YouTube channel. I'm going to build my email list. I'm going to post a bunch of social content, short form videos, all these things that you're supposed to do. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things, but they're doing those things without at the same time trying to figure out a way that they can generate an income that's going to allow them to speed up the process of building up their audience. So what creators typically do is they'll spend months or years building content. And a lot of the popular creators online, they'll tell you the same thing. It takes 1, 2, 3 years for you to get to the point where you have an audience the size where you're able to earn enough income that allows you to be a full-time content creator. I don't know about you, but I didn't want to wait that long. When I first started off as a creator, I thought that that was the path I was supposed to take. And so I did that. I was a little naive when I did it. I quit my job, dropped everything, even though I was married and had 2 kids at the time. I was like, I'm going to go full blown into this. And I was a little naive thinking that it was going to happen a lot faster. Months goes by, a year goes by, and I was doing everything that you're supposed to do or that they tell you to do. Stay consistent, continue posting, and it was working to a certain extent. But the audience size that I was building, regardless of how fast I was able to do it, wasn't allowing me to earn the income I needed in order to support myself or support my family. So then I started changing my approach and saying, okay, what am I doing all this for anyway? I'm doing all this to earn an income, to earn a living. And yes, do I love helping people? Do I love giving back to a community? Do I love teaching people the things that I know? Absolutely. I love doing all those things. I still love doing all those things. But if that stuff's not backed up with the income that you need to support yourself, then you need to go back and think, if I'm going to start off as a creator or I'm early on in my journey, is it more important for me to have a 5,000 person email list or to make $5,000 a month? Is it more important for me to have 1 million followers on YouTube, or is it more important for me to figure out a way where I can consistently make $10,000 a month as a creator? And you can do both of those at the same time. If you want to learn how I did eventually get to the point where I was doing both at the same time and how you can do that too, I put together a free workshop. It's Path to 10K. Down in the comment or down below in the video description, you'll see there's a link to that. It's a free workshop. It's like an hour where I break down the exact system that you need to go from being just a content creator to a content creator that actually generates the income you need to be a full-time content creator. Stop being so humble. Like, this is a really hard lesson for a lot of creators to learn, because a lot of creators that I know that are really good at what they do and that have a real passion for helping people have a really hard time with bragging. And I'm not saying you need to be a jerk or anything like that. I try not to be one myself, but I'm very bad at bragging about client results. I'm very bad about bragging about the things that I've done in my life. Even creating this video and that intro that I made where I said, oh, I got to $2 million as a creator. Even after you reach a level of success like that, if you're a humble person, you don't feel like that. You'll have all these things and thoughts going to your head, sort of like imposter syndrome type thoughts where, well, maybe I just got lucky. Maybe I'm not as smart as I am. Maybe I tripped into the right thing. Maybe that post that went viral was just happenstance. Maybe the work I did in my career was just right place, right time. Like, maybe I don't really know what it is that I'm doing. And even though you can have proof over and over again of your ability to help people and your ability to get results and your ability to do things for yourself, even, a lot of times there's this mental block that we have as creators where we don't want to come off as cringe. We don't want to come off as somebody who thinks they're better than other people. But doing that and stopping yourself from talking about the results that you get and the wins you're able to get or the wins that you've gotten for yourself can be in really empowering, not just for you as a creator, but for the people in your audience, because they want to hear those things. Like, sure, did it feel weird for me to record an intro where I said I went from being homeless as a kid to being a $2 million a year creator? Like, yeah, it felt weird, but it's just one of those things that you have to do, because even though it might feel weird to me, to somebody else that's out there, to some of you that are watching this who came from bad upbringings or had a rough time growing up, or maybe you're not earning as much as you want right now, hearing that somebody could go from that to earning a substantial income and building a substantial business is empowering for them. So don't look at it so much as you're trying to bolster up your ego and trying to bolster up your credibility. Look at it more like you telling these stories and showing the results that you've gotten for yourself and for other people. You're doing that to empower your audience, to show them what's possible. And then ideally what ends up happening is once they trust you enough and they see the results that you're able to get, they want to take that and say, you know what, if Jake or whoever was able to do that for themselves or for their clients, I want that result for me. And if they're able to go from this to this, or he was able to go from this to this, then I'm able to do that too. And now I believe in myself to the point where I'm going to actually take a shot and do something different. And that leads to number 3, which is going to be a little controversial, but stick with me, which is be more selfish. Through the years of building my creator business, I way too often found myself doing things for other people without thinking about what it was going to do for me. And this goes into everything about your business. When you're just starting out, being more selfish means, again, going back to that first question that I asked is, do you want to be popular or do you want to be profitable? Now, the unselfish thing would be to just go the popularity route and not do anything with the profitability route. And a lot of creators will convince themselves that, well, if I create a product right out the gate, people might not be able to afford it, or my audience won't know me enough to buy it, or, things like that just kind of pop in your head. And that is being unselfish. You're thinking more about the people in your audience than you are thinking about yourself. And I'm not saying there's not a healthy balance with this. You want to do both. But if you're not more selfish as a creator early on, you're not going to last long enough to the point where your unselfishness will reach the masses widespread enough for you to make any sort of impact. And I think for a lot of creators, you don't just want to earn money, you also want to make an impact. That's the part of being a creator and being unselfish, is you want to give as much as you can away and make other people's lives better in whatever niche or vehicle or target market that you're trying to go after. When you get further along as a creator, what you're going to find is that you're going to be forced to make decisions that maybe are in line with what success looks like for the average creator, but potentially not what success looks like for you. So a good example of this in my situation was, there were several times as I was building my creator business from 20K to 30K to 50K to 100K to 200K a month, that I found myself creating products that my audience really loved, but I wasn't super passionate about, or creating content that I didn't really love, but my audience was super passionate about, or having money profit from the business and reinvesting it back into the business as opposed to investing it in myself and my own financial circumstances and the goals that I had in the future and all of those things. And if I could go back and do something, I would mix in a little bit more selfishness into what I was doing and think a little bit more as I was taking actions to grow my creator business. Is this the kind of content I want to create? Is this the kind of audience that I want to build? Sure, it's doing what I want it to do. It's growing, it's generating me revenue. But if I'm not taking advantage of those things, or I don't feel good about doing those things, then all of it is going to, at some point, feel so hollow that you're just going to want to give up and go do something else. If it's uncomfortable, it's probably the right thing to do. And I know this kind of counters a little bit point number 3 about being more selfish, but the thing with uncomfortability is you have to grade it on a scale. And I'll tell you a really quick story that has to do with this. When I first started my creator business, my whole goal was to try to generate as much income as I could without ever having to talk to anybody. I'm pretty introverted by nature. I also have ADHD, and I just didn't want to be forced to have a ton of conversations with people in order to make money. The jobs that I had before I became a creator, that's all the jobs were. I was a business analyst for software companies. There were Fortune 500 companies. And basically, as a business analyst, your job is to translate requirements between the technical people on the team and the non-technical people on the team, or the non-technical clients who wanted something built. So you kind of had to translate, developers speak to clients and clients speak to developers. And it was it was fun. I liked it and I got paid a good amount of money for it. But it required a ton of communication and a ton of back and forth. And I took that and said, when I become a creator, I don't want to have to do those things. I don't want to be forced to have conversations with people in order to generate revenue. And that sounds great and that would be awesome. But that path, what that leads to is what my original creator journey led to, which was a year and a half of inconsistent or zero revenue because I was just focusing on building my audience, when in reality, the fastest path for me to generate revenue came about a year and a half in, where I got over the uncomfortable side of having conversations with people and just decided, you know what? I have a good offer. I know what I can do. I know how I can help people. I'm going to speed this process up. Instead of them having to digest tons of content, I'm just going to present them with an offer to get on a conversation with me and then sell them on the product or service that I had. And when I made that decision, I went from barely, and I mean barely, able to support my family at all, to the point where my wife had to go back to work, to doing $30K a month within 6 to 8 weeks, I think it took us. And then we went from $30K a month to $80K a month. And so a lot of times what you'll find as a creator is success is on the other side of being uncomfortable. And it doesn't have to just be sales calls. It could be anything. If you feel cringe about bragging, like I mentioned earlier, well, success is probably on the other side of getting over that discomfort. If you are uncomfortable about creating a product in general, like whether it's a low ticket or high ticket product, doesn't really matter. Success is probably on the other side of doing that. If you are just starting out and you're like, man, I don't want, to create a website and write a bio about myself and all that stuff, like success for you is probably right on the other side of that discomfort. And something that I've learned over the years is once you practice getting over the discomfort of whatever it is, you're going to find two things. One is that success for you is probably right on the other side of that. And two, that getting over something that's uncomfortable gets a lot easier as you practice that over time. Because at the end of the day, getting over that is just a muscle that you have to build in your brain, where it's like, okay, I know this is going to be uncomfortable, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And we see the same pattern with anything, with fitness, with different habits and chores. Once you kind of get used to doing it, is it still suck for me when I have to go to the gym every day? Like, yes, I don't love the habit of going to the gym. If I could just be in amazing shape all the time and not go to the gym, I would. But do I do it anyway? Yeah. And as I go through it, if I do it every day and I practice it enough, it becomes easier. Now, if I stop doing it and then I don't go to the gym for 3 days, 4 days a week, it's like starting the cycle over again, where now I have to be at the beginning and my discomfort level is really high and I have to convince myself to go and do it. So the big thing that I would say to you that I wish I would have done sooner is practice being uncomfortable. If something that you're thinking about doing, is the thing that you need to do, but it just is uncomfortable, stop convincing yourself that there's other things that you can do instead. Stop convincing yourself to keep pushing that thing down on your to-do list and just decide, you know what, I'm going to commit, I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to do something else. Selling before you want to. Now, when I had my offer, I'm not one of those guys that built my personal brand on teaching people how to build a personal brand, or made money online teaching people how to make money online. Like, my offer was completely outside of that. My offer that I had when I first became a creator, and that I took years to get to the point of building and ran for 10 years, was helping early stage startups basically validate their product idea, design it out, and then figure out how to go raise capital for it, and then go work with developers to actually build it. So I was basically teaching them how to do the things that I was already doing for Fortune 500 companies. And one of the things that I noticed, and if you've been or are familiar with the SaaS space at all, like the tech startup space, you'll hear this a lot, this idea of needing to validate your product. So what the bad startups will do is they will just build. They'll spend weeks or months building a product, making it great, making it perfect. Sometimes they'll spend tons of money to do that too, whether it's their own money that they're investing into it, or they'll give a huge amount of equity away to a developer to build a product. And then they'll launch it 6 months to a year later after it's done being built, and then crickets. They can't figure out how to get their target market to use it. They can't generate enough revenue for it. And it's because typically what they're finding at that point is that they built the wrong product or the wrong features, or they communicated the value the wrong way, or some of that. So now they're scrambling, trying to figure out how to change the product, change this, change that, to figure out how to crack the code, when what they should have done in the beginning, and anyone who's worked with tech startups at all will understand this, what they should have done first is validated their idea. And there's a lot of ways to do that for a tech startup. There's pre-launch signups. There's building a very, very small MVP that takes like 3 days to build and seeing if people will be willing to use it. It's doing pre-sales and trying to get people to pre-buy the product. It's creating a physical or an automated version of the product, which is something that I did with my SaaS company. I basically built like a Zapier automation that did kind of what my software wanted to do. I sold it to a couple of people and I was like, okay, people want to buy this, great. Now let me build a software out of it. And that's a normal thing in the tech startup space, is that you always, always, always want to validate. And even if it takes you a ton of time to do it, you want to validate something before you just go straight out and building it. But for the creator space, that's not anywhere near what you're taught. What you're typically taught as a creator is to build before you sell. As opposed to tech startups, you're taught to sell before you build. But the reason for that is because building software is expensive and time consuming. Well, creating content is expensive and time consuming too. What's the difference between a creator spending 6 months to a year and a half trying to build an audience, trying to publish videos and all these things for the hopes that they can build up an audience who's willing to buy something from them, versus a tech startup who does the same thing, but they're just building software. They spend 6 months to a year building the software, and then at the end, they hope that they did enough for somebody to buy it. I don't like taking that risk. And so a lot of times when I work with brand new creators, what I tell them to do is, instead of just creating content, instead of just publishing your email list, let's actually build an offer. Let's figure out what it is that your ideal customers want to buy. And then once we figure out what your customers want to buy and we make a couple sales and we generate some revenue, then we can say, okay, I know what my ideal target market wants. I know what they're going to buy. Now let me build the ladder to lead people up to the point where they're willing to buy these things. And it gives me much more clarity on who I'm building an audience for, who I'm building this product for. And I had a client once very recently who was in this dilemma. They were building, like they were creating content, tons of Instagram reels, tons of organic content posts. For years they had been doing this and they weren't generating near the amount of revenue that they wanted to generate. And so what I told her was, who's your target market? Like, who are you trying to make money off of here? And she, was a pretty general answer. I was like, okay, let's take a step back. Who's paid for your products or services in the past? And we looked and analyzed all her different clients. And it turns out that her audience was much more targeted in terms of who was buying her stuff, as opposed to the general audience who was following her and liking her stuff and all those things. She had fallen into the trap of caring more about the popularity, thinking it would lead to profitability. Once we figured out who our ideal target market was, we said, okay, let's build a product specific for them. And now let's also start creating content that's specific to them, because there's no point in building an audience as a creator if you can't monetize that audience at some point. And sure, you can monetize an audience that's just general. You can have 100,000 people on the email list that never buy anything from you, but companies will pay to sponsor your email newsletter just in hopes of getting in front of those people. But that is pennies of income for you as a creator compared to what you could make by selling your own products or your own services, whether it's low ticket, high ticket, it doesn't matter. So why wouldn't I just do what tech startups do and say, you know what, instead of building my audience first and only doing that, let me start building my audience, but also create an offer that is in line with who I think my ideal target audience is. Try to promote that offer along with promoting my content. Once I know that people are buying that product, now I know that me creating content is not going to be a waste of time. I'm not going to wake up 6 months or 12 months from now and say, man, I have a big email list, or I have a decent sized email list, but I can't figure out a way to make money from 95% of these people. That's not the place that you want to be as a creator. So always make sure that you decide to sell before you want to, because even though it's uncomfortable to do that, and you might think, well, why would people buy from me? I don't have any credibility yet. I don't have any followers. Just me working with tons of creators and seeing them go through that same process, it does not take a lot of views and it does not take a lot of likes or a lot of shares or a lot of comments for you to start generating revenue as a creator. The only thing you need to go over is the uncomfortable aspect of deciding to sell before you really want to do it. This next one is a little less tangible, but it's just as important, and it's more like a caution for you, which is, you have to understand as a creator or as any entrepreneur really that you're going to feel alone. And I don't mean a little alone, like, oh, things are tough. I mean very alone. And this is a really hard thing for me to talk about because I felt like this for a really long time. And I still feel like this to a certain extent. And that's coming from me. I'm married. I've been married for 20 years. I have 3 amazing kids. 2 of them are teenagers and one's quite a bit younger. But the journey of being a creator and being an entrepreneur can be a very lonely one. Lonely to the point where you will feel like no one understands you. No one gets you. No one understands the things you're trying to accomplish. And you will start internalizing everything. And it won't just be about the business side of things. You will internalize everything about life in general. You'll stop talking about your emotions. You'll stop talking about how excited you are about certain things, because a lot of times as an entrepreneur, to be frank, only 1 out of every 5 to 10 of our ideas are actually really good ideas. It doesn't matter if it's for a brand new thing or if it's for things within your business, but you'll find that you're talking to people that you care about and that care about you, and things will start getting drowned out because they've heard over and over again you doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that. And it's so fast paced that you're probably doing a lot of stuff at the same time and it's hard for them to keep up, or something didn't work out and now everybody's uncomfortable talking about the thing that didn't end up working out. And so it makes you want to stop talking about it. It makes you want to shut down. This isn't me telling you that you shouldn't do that. You're going to. It's just a natural way of doing this. What I'm telling you though is I need you to prepare mentally and emotionally for that to happen, and start putting some systems and processes in place to avoid you falling further down this trap to the point where you start being depressed and overly anxious, where you start getting to the point where you're afraid of making decisions or afraid of messing things up. And there's 3 things that I did that really helped me not get to the point where I didn't feel alone, but at least get me to the point where I felt like I could handle and manage it. So number 1 was finding communities. I know it sounds really obvious, so I don't want to spend a bunch of time on that. But find people that you can work with that are going through the same thing. No, they won't understand exactly what you're going through. You're still going to feel alone. But the nice thing is if you have people that you can talk to and say, man, I just had a really hard week. This YouTube video I posted just completely bombed. Or I had a really hard week. Like I could barely pay myself anything. And now my wife's on my case because like we barely have enough money to cover groceries. Like having somebody that you can say those things to is really important, because you can't have that kind of conversation with a neighbor who works a W-2 job. They won't know what it is that you're talking about, right? So that's number 1. Number 2 is find a mentor or a coach or somebody that you can talk to a little bit, whether it's done with you, where they're just kind of like there to answer questions for you, or done for you where they're helping you actually build something. Like find somebody in your niche or in the thing that you're trying to get help with, and figure out a way that you can get not just connected to them, but connected with the other people that are also working with them too. I've found the best friends that I've ever had working in communities like that, like joining a program, working with the coach, and just trying to put myself out there. There are so many other people who want to find connection, especially today, that they're just sitting there. They're just waiting for somebody to come in and raise their hand and say, hey, I want to talk to somebody. I want to network with somebody. I need help with this. You just need to participate. And then the last thing, and this is probably the easiest thing to do, is just journal. I hate journaling. I hate writing in general, whether it's on the computer or in a notebook. What I do instead is I have an iPhone. Every morning when I first get into the office, I open my journal app on my iPhone, and instead of typing anything out, I just hit the voice button and I just hit record. I just talk to myself for like 5 or 10 minutes. And I usually ask myself a couple different things. One is, what do I need to get done today? Like what's on my to-do list? And I just kind of talk through it. And usually I draw it on the whiteboard just so I have something visual to look at. And then the next question I ask is, what is making me anxious today? Because as an entrepreneur, there's something that's always going to make you anxious. Not enough views, not enough likes, not enough revenue, not enough sales, not working fast enough, not going to opening up another niche, this client work thing. Something will always be giving you anxiety. And so what I would want to do is just journal and say, what's the thing that's making me the most anxious right now? And then what can I do today that's going to resolve that anxiety? So when I get off of work today and I go spend time with my family or spend time with my kids, I know that it's going to be intentional time. that I'm not going to be worried or anxious about the things that I need to do. And even if I have a little anxiety, at least it's not as much if I didn't like outline and talk to myself and say out loud the things that's making me anxious. And you'll find 90% of the time, if you just say the thing that's making you anxious out loud as an entrepreneur, it just sounds a little ridiculous to even be worried or anxious about it. It's just stuff living in your head. And by speaking it out loud, it releases it from your mind to the point where you realize that you're just being a little overly anxious for no apparent reason. The bar is low. And so you should use that to your advantage. Because let's do some math here. Let's say there's 100 people who want to be a creator. Out of those 100, how many people will actually go from wanting to actually doing anything about it, anything tangible about it? Whether it's the decision to actually do it, getting a headshot, building their website, signing up for an email list provider. Of those 100 people, there's probably maybe 20% who will actually do anything. So that takes it from 100 down to 20. Okay, of those 20, who actually posts for the first time? Out of that 20, maybe 10 tops. Out of those 10 who actually post, how many of them actually post more than once or twice? 5. And people just consistently weed themselves out. So us as entrepreneurs and creators, we think we're competing with a huge amount of people. When at the end of the day, all we're competing with, for the most part, are other people who are in that top 3 to 5% who are actually deciding to take action. And I'm not saying that's not real competition and that it's not something that you should keep in mind. What I am saying is that you shouldn't get stuck in your head thinking to yourself that, who am I? How am I going to stand out? How's anybody going to find out about me? Nobody's going to care about the stuff that I'm creating, because there's so many other people who are either doing this or want to do this too. That's not true, because all these people will just start weeding them out. So you just need to get to the point where you're able to stay, and I hate this word, but it's a good one for this situation, is like just staying consistent. Not consistent, creating content for a year and a half, hoping that you'll make money, but just consistency in terms of staying in the game. Now, all of these things will hopefully get you to the outcome that you're looking for, which hopefully, if you're watching this, is to be a full-time creator. I'm not saying that you want to be, famous or wealthy. I know that's not what I want either. I never got into this game to be famous or for a bunch of people to know me. And honestly, if I could support myself and my family without doing any of this stuff, I probably would. And a lot of you probably feel that way too. Like building your personal brand, bragging online, creating content, all of that is just a vehicle or a mechanism to get you to the point where you're able to live the life that you want, take care of yourself, take care of the people that you love, and all of that. And so if your goal is to be a full-time creator, what I want you to do is watch this video that pops up. And essentially what I do is just walk through the biggest mistake that I see creators make, what they should do differently in order to hit their income goals sooner, as opposed to slogging through content creation. And this would work for you whether you have a big audience, a small audience, or just a non-existent audience altogether.